There is a dangerous mistake most people make when they encounter power. They believe powerful people must explain themselves. They don't. The more powerful a person becomes, the less desperate they are to be understood by everyone. They stop defending every decision. They stop announcing every move. They stop revealing every plan. And most importantly, they stop giving people access to the reasons behind their actions. Because they understand something most people learn far too late. The moment you feel the need to explain yourself, you have already surrendered some control. Think about it. When someone questions your decision, your instinct is often to justify it. When someone misunderstands you, you rush to correct them. When someone doubts your ambition, you feel compelled to prove them wrong. But power operates differently. Power understands that perception is not always reality, and that you do not need to control every opinion about you. Some of the most influential people in history understood the value of silence, restraint, mystery, and calculated action. They knew that revealing too much creates weaknesses. Explaining too much gives others information they can use against you. And seeking approval makes you dependent on the very people whose approval you claim you don't need. So in this speech, we're going to uncover asterisk 7 things powerful people never explain to anyone. Not because they are arrogant, not because they are hiding something, but because they understand the psychology of power. And once you understand these 7 principles, you may begin to notice something uncomfortable about your own life. You might be explaining yourself far more than necessary. You don't need to announce every goal. You don't need to defend every boundary. You don't need to reveal every strategy. And you certainly don't need to convince everyone that you are becoming someone they can no longer control. Sometimes the strongest response is no response. Sometimes the most powerful move is to remain silent and let your actions speak. So listen carefully, because these 7 things are not simply rules about power. They are lessons about self-control, human nature, influence, and the quiet transformation that happens when you stop seeking permission from the world. The less you explain, the more carefully people begin to watch what you do. And that is where your real power begins. One of the most powerful things a person can learn is to stop announcing what they intend to become. Powerful people understand that goals are fragile when they are still living inside your mind. The moment you reveal a major ambition to everyone around you, you invite opinions, doubts, criticism, jealousy, and unnecessary expectations into something that has not yet had the chance to grow. This is why people with real influence often move quietly. They do not need everyone to know what they are building, because they understand that attention belongs on execution, not explanation. Most people make the mistake of speaking about their future as though talking about it is the same as creating it. They tell friends about the business they will start, the body they will build, the money they will make, the person they will become, or the life they will create. For a moment, they feel powerful because they have described an impressive future. But there is a psychological trap hidden inside this behavior. When you receive admiration for an intention, your mind can experience a small taste of the reward before you have earned the result. The excitement of telling people can temporarily replace the discipline required to actually accomplish the goal. Powerful people protect themselves from this trap. They understand that ambition becomes stronger when it is kept private and converted into action. Instead of telling everyone what they are going to do, they begin doing it. Instead of announcing the transformation, they accept the uncomfortable process of changing when nobody is watching. Instead of demanding recognition for their effort, they allow the evidence to accumulate silently. There is another reason they remain quiet. Every goal you reveal becomes information. Information creates leverage, and leverage can be used against you. If people know exactly what you want, they know what can discourage you. If they know what you fear losing, they know where you are vulnerable. If they know the destination you are pursuing, they can question every step you take toward it. They may not even realize they are doing it, but their doubts can slowly enter your mind and weaken your certainty. Imagine telling someone that you are going to leave your current career and build something of your own. Some will encourage you. Others will immediately explain why it will fail. They will tell you about people who tried and lost everything. They will remind you of the risks. They will ask whether you are being realistic. Suddenly, a goal that once felt clear becomes surrounded by other people's fears. This is why silence can become a strategic advantage. It allows you to develop without constantly defending the direction you have chosen. You can make mistakes without an audience. You can change your strategy without having to explain why. You can experiment, fail, adjust, and try again while everyone else remains unaware of the process. Powerful people also understand the difference between seeking accountability and seeking approval. Accountability can strengthen discipline because it connects you to someone who genuinely helps you remain consistent. Approval is different. Approval makes your confidence dependent on external reactions. If people applaud your goal, you feel motivated. If they criticize it, you begin to question yourself. A person who wants power over their own life cannot allow their emotional stability to rise and fall according to the opinions of spectators. There will always be people who want evidence before they respect you. Give them evidence. There will always be people who doubt your ability. Do not waste your energy arguing with them. There will always be people who underestimate what you are capable of. Let them continue underestimating you while you work. Your goal does not become more valuable because more people know about it. Your dream does not become more realistic because you announced it publicly. Your future does not require an audience. What it requires is consistency, patience, discipline, and the willingness to continue working during the period when there is no applause. The most interesting transformation often happens during this invisible stage. You stop talking about what you will do and start developing the habits necessary to do it. You stop asking whether people believe in you and begin asking whether your daily actions are worthy of the future you want. You stop measuring progress through compliments and begin measuring it through results. This creates a different kind of confidence. It is not loud. It does not need constant reassurance. It does not need to dominate conversations. It comes from knowing that every day you are quietly becoming more capable, more disciplined, and more prepared. Then one day people notice that something has changed. The person who used to talk about becoming successful is suddenly successful. The person who described a different life is suddenly living it. The person who once needed everyone to believe in them no longer needs anyone to understand what they are doing. Powerful people understand that boundaries do not require permission. One of the clearest signs of inner strength is the ability to say no without producing a long explanation afterward. Most people struggle with this because they have been conditioned to believe that refusing someone is rude, selfish, or disrespectful. They feel guilty when they protect their time, energy, attention, or priorities. So they begin explaining themselves, hoping the other person will agree with their reasons. But the moment your boundary depends on someone else accepting your explanation, it stops being a boundary and becomes a negotiation. A powerful person understands the difference. They know that saying no is not an attack. It is simply a decision. You do not have to dislike someone to refuse their request. You do not have to be angry to create distance. You do not have to prove that your reason is important enough for another person to accept it. Your time belongs to you. Your attention belongs to you. Your energy belongs to you. And if you constantly give these things away because you are afraid of disappointing people, eventually you will have very little left for the life you are trying to build. Think about how often people explain themselves when they could simply be clear. Someone asks you to attend an event, and instead of saying, "I cannot come," you create an elaborate story. Someone demands your attention when you are working, and you feel obligated to explain every detail of your schedule. Someone crosses a line, and instead of addressing the behavior directly, you spend 10 minutes defending why the behavior affected you. In each situation, excessive explanation creates opportunities for argument. If you say, "I cannot do that because I have decided to focus on something else," Someone may respond, but it will only take a few minutes. If you explain that you need rest, they may tell you that everyone is busy. If you explain why you are distancing yourself, they may challenge every reason you give. The more information you provide, the more material another person has to debate. Powerful people recognize this psychological pattern. They do not turn every boundary into a courtroom where they must present evidence. They understand that people who respect them do not require endless justification. While people determined to violate their boundaries will often argue regardless of how reasonable the explanation sounds, this does not mean becoming cold or cruel. It means becoming clear. You can be respectful without being available. You can be kind without being obedient. You can care about someone without allowing them unlimited access to your life. You can forgive someone without inviting the same behavior back into your world. There is tremendous freedom in understanding this distinction. Once you stop trying to make everyone comfortable with your boundaries, you become more comfortable enforcing them. You begin to realize that disappointment is not the same as harm. Someone being unhappy with your decision does not automatically mean you made the wrong decision. This is where many people lose control of their lives. They become addicted to being understood. They want everyone to agree with their choices. They want friends, family, colleagues, and strangers to approve of every boundary they establish. But that desire gives other people unnecessary influence over their decisions. The stronger approach is simple. Communicate your boundary clearly, then let your behavior reinforce it. If you do not want to answer messages late at night, establish that habit. If you cannot lend money, say no without constructing a dramatic explanation. If you need distance from someone, create distance instead of repeatedly announcing that you need it. Your actions should make your position unmistakable. At first, people may test you. They may be surprised because they were accustomed to having access to you whenever they wanted. They may accuse you of changing. They may call you selfish. They may ask why you are suddenly different. This is where emotional discipline becomes essential. You do not need to become defensive. You do not need to prove that you are still a good person. You simply need to remain consistent. Because boundaries become powerful through repetition. When people discover that your no actually means no, they eventually stop negotiating with it. When they realize that your time is protected, they begin respecting it. When they understand that your attention is not endlessly available, they become more deliberate when approaching you. Powerful people understand that not every decision deserves a public explanation. There is a common belief that if you make the right choice, everyone around you should understand why you made it. But reality does not work that way. People see only fragments of your circumstances. They do not experience your thoughts, your pressures, your responsibilities, your goals, or the information you have gathered before reaching a conclusion. Yet many people still feel obligated to defend every decision as though their life requires approval from an audience. This creates unnecessary weakness. The more you explain every decision, the more you expose your thinking to people who may not have enough information to understand it. Someone who knows only one chapter of your story may confidently judge the entire book. They may question why you changed direction, why you rejected an opportunity, why you ended a relationship, why you moved away, why you stopped trusting someone, or why you chose a different path. They are evaluating your decision from the outside, while you are living with the consequences from the inside. Powerful people understand this difference. They listen to advice, but they do not surrender their judgment to it. They can consider another person's opinion without allowing that opinion to control their final choice. They know that listening is not the same as obeying. Imagine making a major career decision. You have spent months studying the situation, considering the risks, calculating your finances, examining opportunities, and thinking about where you want your life to go. Someone hears about your decision for 5 minutes and immediately tells you that you are making a mistake. If you become defensive, you enter their frame. Suddenly, you are spending your energy trying to convince them instead of continuing to execute your plan. This is one of the hidden costs of excessive explanation. It shifts your attention away from the decision itself and toward the opinions surrounding it. You become more concerned with being understood than with being effective. Powerful people reverse this priority. They ask themselves a different question. Is this decision aligned with what I know, what I value, and where I am trying to go? If the answer is yes, they move forward. They do not require a committee to approve every step. This does not mean they are incapable of admitting mistakes. In fact, true strength requires the ability to change course when new information appears. But changing your decision because you discovered something important is completely different from changing your decision because someone criticized you. One comes from awareness, the other comes from insecurity. There will always be people who interpret your decisions according to their own fears. If they would never take the risk, they may call your courage foolishness. If they are afraid of change, they may call your ambition unrealistic. If they are comfortable where they are, they may question why you want more. Their judgment often reveals more about their worldview than it reveals about your decision. This is why powerful people become selective about whose opinions they value. They understand that not every voice deserves equal access to their mind. Advice from someone with experience can be valuable. Criticism from someone who understands the situation can reveal weaknesses, but random opinions from people who know almost nothing about your circumstances are simply noise. The ability to make decisions without constantly seeking approval creates independence. You begin trusting your own judgment. You become comfortable standing alone when necessary. You stop confusing disagreement with danger. Some people will misunderstand you. Let them. Some will question your choices. Let them question. Some will decide that your decision is wrong before they know the reasons behind it. You do not have to chase them down and correct their perception. Your responsibility is not to make every person understand your life. Your responsibility is to live it intelligently. The more secure you become in your own judgment, the less you feel compelled to explain yourself. You can say, "This is the decision I have made," without immediately adding 10 reasons to make it acceptable. You can hear disagreement without becoming emotionally reactive. You can walk away from an argument without feeling that silence means defeat. That is where real authority begins. It is not the ability to force everyone to agree with you. It is the ability to remain composed when they do not. Powerful people understand that walking away does not always require a final speech. When respect disappears, when trust is repeatedly broken, or when a relationship becomes destructive, many people feel compelled to explain exactly why they are leaving. They want the other person to understand their pain, acknowledge their mistakes, and recognize what they have lost. But this desire for closure can become another form of dependence. You may believe you are leaving while secretly waiting for the other person to give you permission to leave. A powerful person does not wait for that permission. They understand that sometimes the decision to walk away is the explanation. They do not need to create a dramatic confrontation simply to prove that their departure is justified. They recognize that certain situations become clearer through distance than through another argument. This is especially important when dealing with people who constantly challenge boundaries. If someone has repeatedly ignored your concerns, dismissed your values, betrayed your trust, or taken advantage of your patience, another explanation may not change anything. You can explain yourself perfectly and still be misunderstood. You can describe every disappointment and still hear excuses. You can present every fact and still be blamed for reacting to the behavior. At some point, continued explanation becomes wasted energy. Powerful people recognize that their attention is valuable. They do not spend unlimited amounts of it trying to convince someone to respect them. They understand that respect demonstrated through behavior matters more than apologies spoken during an emotional conversation. Walking away is not always about anger. Sometimes it is about clarity. You realize that continuing the same cycle will produce the same result, so you remove yourself from the cycle. You stop arguing, you stop chasing, you stop asking for basic consideration. You stop trying to force someone to become the person you hoped they would be. This can be difficult because humans naturally seek resolution. We want the final conversation. We want the perfect explanation. We want the other person to say, "Now I understand." But real life rarely gives us such clean endings. Sometimes you have to accept that someone may never understand your decision. That acceptance creates freedom. If your peace depends on another person's understanding, they still possess influence over you. If you need them to admit that they were wrong before you can move forward, you are still emotionally connected to the conflict. If you need an apology before you can stop thinking about what happened, you have placed your healing in someone else's hands. Powerful people take that power back. They understand that leaving quietly can sometimes be more meaningful than delivering a dramatic speech. Silence removes the opportunity for another endless argument. Distance creates clarity. Time reveals patterns that emotional conversations often hide. This does not mean avoiding every difficult conversation. There are situations where communication is necessary. Mature people can express concerns, confront problems, and attempt to repair relationships. But they also recognize when communication has become repetition. If you have explained the same boundary 5 times and the same behavior continues, the problem may no longer be a lack of understanding. It may be a lack of respect. That distinction changes everything. You should not have to continuously explain why betrayal hurts. You should not have to repeatedly explain why disrespect is unacceptable. You should not have to negotiate for basic dignity. When someone consistently demonstrates that they do not value what you bring into their life, you can believe their behavior without waiting for another explanation. There is strength in recognizing patterns early. Powerful people observe what happens repeatedly rather than becoming hypnotized by promises. They pay attention to actions, consistency, and character. Words matter, but patterns reveal more. When they decide to leave, they do not necessarily announce every thought that led them there. They simply change their availability. They stop participating in destructive conversations. They redirect their attention. They protect their future from a situation that repeatedly threatens their peace. And this is where many people misunderstand power. They think power means having the last word. Sometimes power means realizing that the last word is not worth having. It means refusing to compete for attention with someone who has already shown you that they do not value it. It means choosing your future over the satisfaction of winning one final argument. You may never receive the apology you wanted. You may never hear the explanation you hoped for. You may never convince that person that you were justified, but you can still decide that the chapter is over, and you can stop returning to the same page simply because someone else refuses to accept that you have turned it. Powerful people understand that silence is not emptiness. It is a form of control. In a world where everyone wants to react instantly, explain themselves, defend their reputation, and prove that they are right, the person who can remain silent often possesses an advantage that others do not. Silence creates space between what happens and how you respond. That space is where judgment, discipline, and strategy begin to operate. Most people reveal themselves through their reactions. Someone insults them, and they immediately respond. Someone challenges their authority, and they rush to defend themselves. Someone misunderstands them, and they begin explaining. Someone spreads a rumor, and they feel compelled to correct every detail. Their emotions become visible, predictable, and easy to manipulate. Powerful people recognize this weakness and refuse to make themselves so predictable. They understand that not every provocation deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes the strongest move is to observe what happens when you say nothing. Silence can reveal more than words because it forces other people to continue speaking. When you stop filling every uncomfortable moment with explanations, people often reveal their intentions, insecurities, and expectations. They may talk more because they are uncomfortable with the silence. They may expose information they would not have revealed if you had immediately responded. This is why silence can become a strategic tool. It allows you to gather information before making a decision. Instead of reacting to the first emotion that appears, you watch, you listen, you notice patterns, you ask yourself what the person actually wants. Imagine someone approaches you with an accusation. The instinctive reaction is to defend yourself immediately. But what happens if you pause? You may discover that the accusation is based on incomplete information. You may realize that the person is trying to provoke an emotional reaction. You may notice that they are looking for reassurance, control, attention, or conflict. A few seconds of restraint can reveal what several minutes of argument would have hidden. Silence also protects your words from losing their value. If you constantly talk, explain, justify, and comment on everything, your words become ordinary. People stop paying attention because they know another explanation is always coming. But when you speak selectively, your words carry greater weight. People begin listening because they know you are not speaking simply to fill the room. This principle applies to leadership, relationships, negotiations, and personal growth. A leader who reacts emotionally to every criticism creates instability. A leader who pauses before responding demonstrates control. A person who constantly announces their emotions gives others a map to their weaknesses. A person who can remain composed creates uncertainty about what they are thinking and what they will do next. Silence also prevents unnecessary escalation. Many conflicts become larger because two people are competing to be heard. One statement produces another statement, then another, until neither person remembers what started the argument. Powerful people know when to step outside that cycle. They do not need to win every verbal battle. There is a difference between silence as strength and silence as avoidance. Strength means you are capable of speaking, but choose not to waste your words. Avoidance means you are afraid to confront what needs to be addressed. Powerful people do not remain silent when action is necessary. They speak when speaking creates value. They confront when confrontation protects something important. But they refuse to talk simply because someone is demanding a reaction. This distinction gives you control over your emotional energy. Instead of allowing another person's behavior to dictate your response, you decide when and how you will respond. You stop being controlled by urgency. The world will constantly tell you that you must respond immediately. Messages demand instant answers. Arguments demand immediate defense. Criticism demands immediate correction. But urgency is not always importance. Sometimes the smartest response is to wait until your emotions have settled and your thinking has become clear. Silence gives you that time. It also changes how people perceive you. When you stop explaining every move, people become more curious. When you stop reacting to every provocation, they become less certain about how to control you. When you stop chasing approval, your presence becomes more independent. You begin to understand that you do not have to participate in every conversation about yourself. You do not have to correct every false assumption. You do not have to prove your intelligence to people committed to misunderstanding you. You do not have to reveal every thought simply because someone asks. Sometimes silence protects your plans. Sometimes it protects your dignity. Sometimes it protects your emotional stability, and sometimes it simply protects you from saying something that cannot be taken back. Powerful people never feel the need to constantly explain who they are becoming. They understand that transformation is a private process before it becomes a visible reality. When someone decides to change their life, the temptation is often to announce that change to everyone around them. They want people to know that they are different now, that they have new ambitions, new standards, new priorities, and a new vision for the future. But announcing transformation too early can create a strange problem. You begin performing the identity before you have actually built it. A person says they are disciplined, but their habits have not changed. They say they are focused, but their attention is still scattered. They say they are becoming successful, but they spend more time describing success than working toward it. Powerful people avoid this trap by allowing their behavior to speak before their words do. They understand that identity is not created through declarations. It is created through repetition. You become disciplined by repeatedly doing difficult things when you do not feel like doing them. You become confident by repeatedly facing situations that once intimidated you. You become powerful by repeatedly controlling yourself when circumstances give you every reason to react. This is why real transformation is often quiet. There is no need to announce every new habit. There is no need to tell everyone that you have stopped tolerating certain behavior. There is no need to explain every change in your priorities. People may notice eventually, but that is not the purpose of the transformation. The purpose is to become different. When you announce every change, you invite people to compare your present behavior with your claims. They begin watching for contradictions. If you say you are becoming more disciplined but miss your commitments, your words become weaker. If you announce that you no longer tolerate disrespect but repeatedly accept it, people learn that your boundaries are only statements. Powerful people understand that credibility is built through consistency. They do not need to tell people they have changed because eventually their behavior makes the change impossible to ignore. This principle is especially important when you are surrounded by people who knew the old version of you. People become comfortable with familiar identities. If they have known you as someone who always says yes, they may resist when you begin saying no. If they have known you as someone who constantly seeks approval, they may become uncomfortable when you stop asking for it. If they have known you as someone who tolerates disrespect, they may test you when you establish stronger boundaries. You do not need to convince them that you are different. You need to remain different. This is where many people fail. They begin changing, encounter resistance, and immediately start explaining themselves. They say, I am not the same person anymore. They explain why they have new standards. They defend their distance. They try to make everyone understand their evolution. But transformation does not require a public announcement. Imagine planting a seed and digging it up every few days to show people that it is growing. The constant inspection would prevent the very process you are trying to create. Personal growth works in a similar way. Some of the most important changes happen beneath the surface, where nobody can see them. You are building patience when nobody notices. You are developing discipline when nobody applauds. You are learning to control your emotions when nobody knows you resisted the reaction. You are becoming stronger every time you choose long-term value over short-term pleasure. That invisible work eventually produces visible results. One day, people notice that you no longer react the way you used to. They notice that your standards have changed. They notice that you are more selective with your time. They notice that you no longer chase people who ignore you. They notice that your priorities are different. They may ask what happened. You do not need to give them a complete history of your transformation. Your behavior has already answered the question. This is one of the deepest forms of confidence. You no longer need to convince people that you are becoming someone better because you are too busy becoming that person. You stop seeking validation for your progress. You stop checking whether others approve of your direction. You simply continue. There will be moments when people misunderstand your growth. Some will think you have become distant. Some will say you have changed too much. Some will prefer the older version of you because that version was easier for them to influence. But growth is not supposed to preserve everyone's comfort. You are allowed to outgrow old habits. You are allowed to change your standards. You are allowed to become more selective. You are allowed to build a life that no longer resembles the life you once accepted. You do not owe everyone an explanation for becoming stronger. Let people discover the new version of you through your actions. Let your discipline become visible through consistency. Let your boundaries become visible through what you refuse to tolerate. Let your ambition become visible through what you accomplish. Let your character become visible through how you behave when nobody is watching.